You know that one person who always makes everything about themselves? The one who twists every situation so they come out on top? We've all met them, the narcissist. And when you're around them, it feels like walking through a minefield. Every word, every reaction, every look can set them off. But here's the thing, handling a narcissist isn't about controlling them, it's about controlling yourself. Because power isn't in reacting, it's in staying calm, collected, and grounded when they're doing everything they can to make you lose your cool. So today, I want to show you how to protect your peace, keep your composure, and communicate like someone who can't be shaken, even when you're standing face to face with a narcissist. When you deal with a narcissist, the first thing they'll test isn't your intelligence, it's your emotions. They don't win because they're smarter or stronger, they win because they can pull you into a reaction. The moment you react, they control the narrative. That's their game. And the only way to win is not to play. Emotional control isn't about being passive. It's about choosing your response instead of surrendering it. It's the ability to sit in the tension without letting it take over you. Narcissists thrive on emotional chaos. They want you to explode, defend, justify, or chase validation. They want to see that their words have power over you. And when they don't get that reaction, they lose their grip. Think about it like this. Every time you react emotionally, you're giving them data, you're teaching them which buttons to push. But when you stay calm, you become unpredictable. They can't read you, they can't manipulate you, and they can't pull you into their story. That calm isn't weakness, it's strategy. Most people confuse emotional control with suppression, but they're not the same thing. Suppression is pushing your feelings down until they explode later. Control is acknowledging your feelings but not letting them run the show. It's saying, I feel angry right now, but I'm not going to let anger speak for me. That's strength, and it's a skill anyone can learn. Here's the truth, narcissists are addicted to reaction. They crave it like oxygen. They need it to feel significant, to confirm their illusion of superiority. And when you stop feeding that addiction, they suffocate. They'll try harder at first, raising their voice, using guilt, twisting stories, but eventually they realize that your peace is no longer available for negotiation. So how do you do it? How do you maintain emotional control when someone's doing everything they can trigger you? You start by slowing down. Most people react in milliseconds. The words hit and they fire back, but that pause, that 1 second delay is your power. It's the difference between reacting and responding. When they insult you, pause. When they lie, pause. When they twist your words, in that pause, breathe, because that breath is your reset button. It disconnects your emotions from your actions. You don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain. And you definitely don't have to match their energy. Matching their energy means stepping into their arena, and that's where they win. Instead, respond with calm clarity. Use short, neutral statements. I hear you. That's your opinion? Let's stick to the facts. The less emotional fuel you give, the quicker the fire burns out. You're not there to win an argument. You're there to maintain your peace. And let's be real. Sometimes it's not easy, especially when that narcissist isn't a stranger but someone close to you, a boss, a parent, a partner. They know your weak spots, your history, your triggers. That's why emotional control becomes not just a communication skill but a form of self-respect. You're not staying calm for them, you're staying calm for you. When you learn to regulate your emotions, you stop dancing to their tune. You start communicating on your terms. Your tone stays steady, your words deliberate, your body language grounded. You become a mirror that reflects composure instead of chaos. And that shift, that quiet confidence, changes the entire dynamic of the interaction. Now, this doesn't mean you're emotionless or detached. It means you're emotionally intelligent. You know when to speak, when to walk away, and when silence speaks louder than any comeback. Narcissists feed on drama. They starve in calm. Remember, control is contagious. When you stay calm, the energy in the conversation shifts. The narcissist may still try to provoke you, but they start to realize something's different, that they can't reach you the way they used to. That realization is powerful. It doesn't change them, but it changes how they treat you. Here's a perspective: you can't make a narcissist self-aware, but you can make yourself self-aware. You can know your triggers, practice emotional discipline, and train your body to respond differently. It's like emotional martial arts. You don't fight force with force, you redirect it. Emotional control also requires preparation. You can't expect to stay calm in chaos if you don't practice calm and peace. Build the habit daily through mindfulness, reflection, journaling, or simply being aware of how your emotions move. The more familiar you are with your emotional landscape, the less power others have to manipulate it. One of the hardest parts is detaching from the need to be understood. Narcissists will twist your words no matter how carefully you choose them. They'll shift blame, play victim, or project their insecurities onto you. Emotional control means accepting that you won't win that argument and realizing that you don't need to. Your peace doesn't depend on their understanding, it depends on your boundaries. When you stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your time, your energy, and your confidence. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. Every calm response becomes a reminder. I'm in control of me. And that's where true strength lies, not in dominating others, but in mastering yourself. Because anyone can stay calm when life is easy. But staying calm when someone is trying to make you lose it, that's leadership. That's emotional maturity. That's growth. Eventually, you'll reach a point where the narcissist's behavior no longer surprises you. You'll see it for what it is: insecurity dressed as superiority, manipulation disguised as confidence. And instead of reacting, you'll simply observe, you'll recognize the patterns detached from the drama, and walk away with your composure intact. Emotional control turns every confrontation into a mirror, one that reflects your growth, not their chaos. You can't fix them, but you can fortify yourself. You can't change their nature, but you can change your response. And in the end, that's what real power looks like. Boundaries are one of the most misunderstood concepts in relationships, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist. People think boundaries mean distance or hostility, like shutting the world out. But that's not it. Boundaries aren't built to isolate you. They're built to protect you. They don't say, stay away. They say, here's how you can stay. When you deal with a narcissist, boundaries are your armor. They define where you end and where the other person begins. Narcissists have a habit of blurring those lines. They want access to your emotions, your time, your energy, even your sense of worth. Without clear boundaries, they'll keep taking until you have nothing left to give. Setting a boundary is not about punishing them. It's about respecting yourself. It's saying, I deserve to feel safe. I deserve to have peace. That shift from trying to control them to controlling what you allow changes everything, because you can't change a narcissist, but you can decide what version of you they get access to. Here's the tricky part: narcissists see boundaries as rejection. They interpret no as disrespect. So the moment you set one, they'll test it. They'll guilt trip you, charm you, play the victim, or turn defensive. That's their way of pulling the control back. And that's where most people give in. Not because their boundary was wrong, but because they weren't ready for the pushback. The strength of a boundary isn't in how loudly you declare it, it's in how quietly you enforce it. You don't have to explain, argue, or justify. A boundary doesn't need approval to exist. It just needs consistency. Every time you reinforce it, you teach others how to treat you. Every time you bend it to keep the peace, you teach them they can cross it again. Think of it like this: walls keep everyone out. Boundaries let the right people in and keep the wrong behaviors out. The goal isn't isolation, it's clarity. It's saying, I can still care about you, but I won't allow you to mistreat me. That's not cruelty. That's maturity. When you start setting boundaries, expect discomfort, especially if you've spent years people-pleasing, explaining, or overgiving. It'll feel selfish at first, but that discomfort isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're breaking an old pattern. You're teaching yourself that peace doesn't have to come at the cost of your self-respect. Here's a truth most people don't realize: a narcissist doesn't respect words. They respect consequences. You can talk about boundaries all day long, but until you act on them, they won't believe you mean it. If you say, don't raise your voice at me, but stay when they yell, you've taught them your boundary is negotiable. But when you calmly end the conversation or walk away, that's when they realize something has changed. Consistency is everything. The moment you waver, they'll test harder. But the more consistent you are, the less room they have to manipulate. Eventually, even a narcissist learns this person won't engage in the old dance anymore. Boundaries also protect your emotional bandwidth. Every interaction with a narcissist is an energy exchange. You leave the conversation either drained or centered, depending on whether your boundary held. You can decide what topics are off limits, what tone you'll tolerate, or when to disengage. That's not control, it's self-management. It's okay to say, I'm not comfortable with this conversation right now. It's okay to not respond immediately to a guilt-laden text. It's okay to take space. Boundaries give you breathing room between their behavior and your response. They create space for reflection instead of reaction. Another important part: boundaries are not ultimatums. An ultimatum tries to control someone else. A boundary takes ownership of yourself. If you keep yelling, I'm leaving the room, is different from you better stop yelling. One demands, the other decides. Narcissists hate losing control, so the power of a boundary lies in removing that battle entirely. You're not asking for their permission. You're informing them of your standards. And let's be honest, sometimes enforcing boundaries means losing people. Narcissists who benefited from your lack of boundaries will accuse you of being distant, selfish, changed. That's fine, because the version of you they loved was the one they could control. The new you, the grounded, calm, confident one, doesn't serve their narrative, and that's okay. When you stop over-explaining, they'll call you cold. When you stop absorbing their emotions, they'll call you insensitive. But that's not your problem to fix. The moment you start valuing your peace more than their approval, you become free. Healthy boundaries aren't rigid, they're flexible but firm. You can adjust them based on trust and respect. If someone consistently honors your boundaries, you naturally allow more closeness. But if someone repeatedly crosses them, you protect yourself accordingly. That balance keeps relationships healthy and sustainable. There's also a misconception that setting boundaries means conflict. It doesn't have to. You can communicate boundaries calmly, respectfully, and with empathy. You can say, I understand you're upset, but I won't be spoken to that way. You can say, I care about this relationship, but I need space to think. Boundaries built with empathy have a better chance of being received even if they're resisted at first. And sometimes the boundary is silence, no reaction, no explanation. Narcissists thrive on emotional engagement, positive or negative. When you stop feeding the drama, you stop giving them power. Silence can be the loudest boundary of all. You'll notice something beautiful once you start living with boundaries. Your self-respect grows. Your anxiety lessens. You begin to trust yourself again. You realize you don't need to shrink to keep the peace. You can stand tall and still be kind. That's emotional maturity. Boundaries also redefine love, because real love doesn't demand self-abandonment. Real love respects limits. When you enforce your boundaries, you teach others what healthy love looks like. You show them that connection without respect isn't connection at all, it's control. The more you practice boundaries, the less reactive you become. Conversations that once triggered anger or fear now feel manageable. You learn to detach without being cold, to protect your energy without building walls. You become the calm in the storm. At the end of the day, boundaries are a form of communication. They tell the world who you are and what you value. They're not built out of fear, they're built out of self-awareness. And when you start honoring those limits, you attract relationships that honor them too. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out, they're about keeping yourself intact. They remind you that your peace is your responsibility, not a privilege someone else can grant or take away. They give you the freedom to engage without losing yourself, and that's how you win when dealing with a narcissist, not by overpowering them, but by refusing to surrender your peace. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with a narcissist is trying to argue with them. You can't win an argument with someone who's not looking for truth, they're looking for control. And the more you try to reason with them, the more they twist your words, the more they shift the blame, and the more drained you become. Narcissists don't argue to understand, they argue to dominate. They want to win the moment, not the relationship. You could bring logic, facts, even proof, and they'll still find a way to turn it around on you. Because in their world, accountability feels like defeat. So they deflect, deny, and distort until you start questioning yourself instead of them. That's their trap, and the way out is not to fight harder, but to redirect. Redirecting is about shifting the conversation away from emotional chaos and back to calm control. It's the ability to recognize when an argument is no longer productive and gracefully step out of it without losing your composure. It's emotional judo, using their momentum to protect your peace instead of trying to overpower it. Here's the thing, every time you argue, you're stepping into their arena. You're feeding the very cycle that keeps you frustrated, but when you redirect, you're taking back control of where the conversation goes, and more importantly, how it affects you. So what does redirecting actually look like? It's not silent treatment, and it's not avoidance. It's intentional communication. It's about steering the interaction in a direction that serves you instead of draining you. Let's say they accuse you of something you didn't do. Instead of defending yourself endlessly, you can respond with, I see you feel strongly about that, or that's your perspective. You're not agreeing with them. You're acknowledging their reality without letting it control yours. That single move disarms their power. It gives them nothing to push against. When they try to bait you with insults or guilt, don't take the bait. Narcissists thrive on reactions because that's their proof of importance. If you get angry, they win. If you over-explain, they win. But if you stay calm and redirect, you become the one who controls the tempo of the interaction. You might say, I'm not going to argue about this, or I'm happy to discuss this when we can both stay respectful. These phrases are boundaries in motion. They end the tug of war before it begins. Because here's the truth. Arguing with a narcissist isn't communication, it's chaos disguised as dialogue. Redirecting also means refusing to match their emotional intensity. Narcissists use tone and volume to overwhelm. They might raise their voice or become sarcastic to provoke you to escalation. But when you lower your tone, slow your pace, and keep your posture relaxed, you interrupt the emotional current. You create contrast. And contrast is power. You might be surprised how effective calm redirection is. It throws them off balance because it denies them the emotional fuel they depend on. Instead of saying, you're wrong, say, that's not how I see it. Instead of stop blaming me, say, let's focus on the actual issue. These subtle shifts move you from defense to direction. Another key part of redirection is knowing when to walk away. You don't have to finish every argument. You don't owe anyone your emotional energy, especially someone who weaponizes it. You can say, I'm not having this conversation right now, and leave. You're not being rude, you're protecting your peace. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Jefferson Fisher often says, don't let their chaos become your chaos. That's what redirection is about. It's not about silencing them, it's about staying centered within yourself. When you redirect, you're sending a clear message, you can't pull me out of character. It's also important to understand what not arguing doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It doesn't mean you let lies go unchallenged forever. It means you pick your battles with strategy. You address what truly matters when emotions are stable, not when tempers are high. When you redirect, you're training both yourself and them. You're teaching your nervous system that conflict doesn't have to equal chaos. You're teaching them that manipulation doesn't work on you anymore. And with time, these new patterns create new dynamics. Sometimes redirecting can sound like empathy, but it's strategic empathy. It's acknowledging feelings without surrendering truth. You might say, I understand that's frustrating for you, or it sounds like you're upset about that, and then calmly guide the focus elsewhere. You give acknowledgement, but not power. Here's why this works. Narcissists crave emotional control. When you argue, they feed off your defensiveness. But when you redirect, you turn the spotlight back on them without confrontation. You're no longer the emotional supply. They are left to face the silence of their own tactics. And that silence is uncomfortable for them. Because silence means you're not playing anymore. It means their tricks don't land. Over time, they either adjust or reveal themselves more clearly. Either way, you win because you're no longer trapped in endless, pointless debates. You'll notice this change inside yourself first. The more you practice redirection, the less reactive you become. Conversations that used to trigger you will start feeling like background noise. You'll see through the manipulation, the blame shifting, the gaslighting, and instead of feeling anger, you'll feel clarity, and clarity is peace. It's that moment when you realize, I don't have to prove my worth here. You stop chasing validation from people who will never give it. You stop explaining yourself to those who twist your words. You start responding from a place of composure, not confusion. That's when you begin to lead the interaction, not with power, but with presence. Redirecting is leadership in action. It's communication with intention. It says, I can hold space for disagreement without losing myself. It says, I won't fight for attention, I'll stand in calm. One of the most powerful things you can ever say to a narcissist is nothing at all. Silence can't be twisted, it can't be argued with. It creates a gap where their words lose momentum. In that gap, your peace lives. So the next time a narcissist tries to drag you into an argument, breathe. Ask yourself, what outcome am I really trying to achieve? If it's understanding, know that you won't get it through conflict. If it's peace, you'll find it in redirection. When you master this skill, you'll realize something freeing. Not every accusation deserves a defense, not every insult deserves attention, and not every argument deserves your energy. You don't need to win the fight to win your peace. You just need to stop showing up for battles that don't serve you, because the real victory isn't proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you're no longer controlled by chaos. That's what redirection does. It gives you your power back one calm response at a time.